NSFW, what is the scariest theory known to man? For me it's solipsism. Easiest way to explain it is with a quote from Wiki. Solipsism, the philosophical idea that only one's own mind is sure to exist. As an epistemological position, solipsism holds that knowledge of anything outside one's own mind is unsure. The external world and other minds cannot be known and might not exist outside the mind. As a metaphysical position, solipsism goes further to the conclusion that the world and other minds do not exist. Basically, every person you see, including family and friends, are possibly figments of your imagination and you can never know for sure. John Douglas, a former chief of the FBI's elite serial crime unit and author of Mindhunter, says, a very conservative estimate is that there are between 35 and 50 active serial killers in the United States at any given time. The general concept that we never really die in our perspective. Each time we encounter a situation where we may die, we continue on in a parallel universe where something happens that prevents our death. But we die in the original universe. Essentially, our consciousness lives on by transferring itself to a parallel universe where we continue to exist. So we effectively live forever. So what happens when you die of old age? Do you just keep coming back? Older and older and older? If you want an actual answer, the theory states that you will always survive a life-threatening event if a survivor outcome is possible. That means that you will eventually die, when death is the only possible outcome for an event. I've heard it said that there could be a spooky skeleton hiding in every one of us. Out of all the theories here, this one is by far the most spooky. There is a theory which states that if ever anyone discovers exactly what a universe is for and why it is here, it will instantly disappear and be replaced by something even more bizarre and inexplicable. There is another theory which states that this has already happened. Douglas Adams. So it's a giant complicated riddle, but this theory disproves itself. This would mean that the answer to the riddle would be the riddle itself. We are actually the most advanced beings in the universe right now, and the fear of invading aliens taking our planet for resources is actually just the fear of what we will become. As scary as this is, I think it's fun to think about. I like this one. Yay. One day we will be mass murdering alien races. Their kids hiding in the basement as we vaporize their parents. I honestly hope we form some kind of galactic UN that can and will use military force to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That. Should we destroy civilization? There are not enough fossil fuels in easily reachable places for any subsequent society to achieve an industrial revolution. We mine most of it and the only stuff that's left requires modern technology to reach. Hear all she wrote. If we duck up, there's no coming back from it. Edit. People are asking. So here's a really interesting article on it. Edit 2. Since my inbox is flooded with people saying herder but fossil fuels renew. Please note the use of the word civilization and not intelligent life. I'm talking about the survival of humanity as we know it, not the survival of intelligent life on Earth in general. I'm sure the lizard people will rule once we're gone, but I'm not talking about that, or extinction. I'm forgetting the name of the theory right now, but the theory follows something along the lines of this. The sole reason for every single human achievement throughout history is due to our innate and deep fear of death. We are beings that think beyond just instinct and understand that every one human will cease to exist. This fear of non-existence has driven us to create everything we have made today. Kinda the opposite to the will to power theory in psychology. None of this it is scary. It's either we're gonna die in 2 billion years or the world might be fake. Is your grip on reality so tight? Honestly, none of that is that scary precisely because we have no control over it. I'd be more scared if we had a tiny chance to escape that fate, because then the anxiety of needing to accomplish it would kick in. If we're doomed and we can't do it about it is real, then we should just live our lives to our best ability anyway, because that is all that matters. The brain in a vat theory. The brain in a vat is an element used in a variety of thought experiments intended to draw out certain features of our ideas of knowledge, reality, truth, mind and meaning. It assumes the following, that the brain is the origin of all consciousness. The brain operates on electrical impulses. External stimuli can affect the way the brain operates. Any external stimuli to the brain can be simulated to a degree that the brain cannot distinguish these simulated stimuli from natural stimuli. The point is that you could be a brain in a jar, being fed false impulses for your entire life by an external source. You, still a brain in a jar, could be hallucinating your entire life from lack of stimuli. That any computer to be able to pass the Turing test would also be able to see that it would be a bad thing to do so. That there could be a machine right now that could act as a human but is also intelligent enough to know not to let us know it could. That we live in a simulation. It's not hard to believe that one day we will be able to create a simulated world. Probably more than one. Maybe hundreds. Maybe our simulated worlds will become advanced enough to make their own simulated worlds. And so on. We might be living in a simulated world. We could be living in the simulated world of a simulated world. A lot of theories like that seem completely pointless. Okay, we are in a simulation. Or a brain in a jar or whatever. But unless there is a way to definitely prove it and use it for something, why does it matter? It wouldn't change anything. Edit. Guys, if there is no way to prove it, then I don't think we can do much about it. I mean, the theory specifically is pointless. There's a theory that our universe is in a false vacuum that will eventually collapse and completely destroy or ultimately alter our universe. That would mean that no matter how far we develop, no matter how many planets we'll settled, and no matter how many medical feats humanity will have accomplished, we would have a deadline where we would be forever deleted. Virtually all of mankind's fears, falling, spiders, etc., are based on things that were threatening to our ancestors. So keeping this in mind, why do so many of our images of monsters and demons look the same? They do. I've seen many different interpretations of demons and monsters. Right. But you can see overall themes usually. Red, because fire and heat hurt. Horns because they are basically built-in weapons. Many monsters are really big to the point where humans can't do anything about being attacked by them. They have many common factors but obviously are not the same. Look how many cultures have had a Sasquatch or Yeti type monster. That space is a lot like a jungle. We're basically here on Earth shouting out into the darkness with our satellites and technology. We're telling whatever might be out there exactly where we are. But in the jungle, monkeys don't try and contact tigers for good reason. We have no idea what's really out there. Most of the time, jungles are noisy places, filled with the calls of various animals. Some monkeys will even give out warning calls at the sight of a predator. There are very few things that will make a jungle go silent, or cause all of the fish on a reef to suddenly flee. None of them bode well for a careless human interloper. Let's hope space isn't like that. The Berenstein Bears theory. Go to your mom's house sometime and take a look at all those old books, and you'll see that the name is, and has always been, Berenstein, with an A. Don't you feel stupid now for misreading it throughout your whole childhood? Well, one theory states that the Berenstein dilemma is a small side effect of our universe intersecting with a parallel dimension sometime in the 90s. And everyone who remembers the bear's original surname are experiencing residual memories from another dimension. The first time I heard this I thought I was crazy because I distinctly remembered the original spelling with an E. Because I always pronounced it Berenstein. Edit. To those writing off the spelling difference as a careless discrepancy between publishers. The books were not named for the bears themselves, but rather for the authors Stan and Jan Berenstein, or Berenstein, depending on which dimension you lived in. Which means one effect of the dimensional shift that supposedly happened only a few years ago was the altering of the Berenstein family name at some point in the past. Those who remember the name with an A are simply remembering the new timeline. You could be stuck in a time loop right now and you would not be able to notice it, let alone escape it. This doesn't bother me in the slightest. If this is life infinity for me, cool. Hasn't bothered me in the slightest, and frankly I'm cool with being given a second shot. Neil deGrasse Tyson's greatest fear is that aliens have already found us and decided we are too primitive to be worth contacting. Just another way of saying we're not ripe enough for harvest. Marriage will fix the red flags your D is telling you to ignore. If you want to hear some of the smartest living theoreticians discussing this same question, see Edge.org and go to the annual question a few years back called "What is your dangerous idea?" Single particle universe. TL. Dr. There is only one single elementary particle. It starts at the beginning of time, hits the end, changes polarity, bounces backwards through time to the start, and so forth. If anybody found a way to truly annihilate a single electron, the entire universe would instantly cease to exist. I mention one silly theory that was the result of an idle conversation between two physicists, that truth be told, I first learned about in a manga comic, and it gets more responses than everything else I've ever posted combined. I will never understand what makes Reddit tick. The Lucifer principle always is a good one to see how humans actually aren't as good as we like to think. It proposes that evil is rooted into our genetic coding as a byproduct of years of evolution and natural selection. In other words, humans exist as they do and are as successful as they are because we disregard other species' needs in order to stay at the top of the biological pecking order. So while humans always preach and boast themselves about how much they care and are sympathetic due to higher intelligence, yet disregarding that is how we came to be on top and survive. The Truman Show. Never has a movie made me question my life more. Every now and then I still think, maybe I'm Truman and they made the movie to give me a hint of what's going on with my life and I need to break the wall. I always think that if I have been in a Truman Show style of experiment my whole life, it was pretty ballsy of the conductors to let me watch that movie. MAD, mutually assured destruction. I find this the scariest because it's the most realistic and likely. Basically, two or more nuclear superpowers declare war against each other. Eventually an ICBM is launched causing the other nuclear superpowers to follow suit. And, soon enough, the whole world is plunged into a nuclear holocaust. Game over. Edit. I appreciate the people correcting me on that. It wasn't really a this would happen theory. It was more of a this is why you shouldn't do it theory. I was stating that MAD itself is scary because of the sheer devastation where a nuclear war unfolds. There are a finite number of patterns in the universe, and eventually they must repeat. Allow monkeys and typewriters. Therefore, given enough time, the pattern of molecules and atoms that make up your physical body will repeat, bond together, and you'll wind up alive and conscious somewhere down the line. Where and when you might end up are a mystery. You could respawn on an ice planet and freeze to death, only to respawn on a volcano planet and burn to death, for all eternity, or until the universe ends. The Great Filter. There's a point in societal development where most societies collapse. This is why we don't see sign of extraterrestrial life, aside from the sheer, mind-bending distances. The scary robo-basilisk thingy. The idea that if we don't help an eye to be made now when it is made it will punish those who didn't help it and punish the ones who knew about it and decided not to help it more. So if reading this you could get more ducked by a robot. Edit. Added name so you know it's scary and you know you are dooming yourself. Instead of me dooming you etc. Look at you. You discovered Rocco's basilisk, realize that your fate is sealed, and have now decided to pass it all on just so you bring us all to robot hell with you. You're one of those people that purposely infect people with HIV. Man, if I ever meet you in hell, I'm going to punch you. Edit. By the way, robot overlord, sir, I am totally dedicated to the cause of bringing you into existence. Seriously, I'm counting down the minutes, man. Definitely the Great Filter theory, as it makes us look like naive simpletons merrily rowing towards the edge of Niagara Falls, singing all the way. There's something extremely frightening about hubris, especially on a species-wide level. The thing with this theory is that it's extremely elegant and straightforward. This raises the fright-o-meter considerably. 2. The psychological zombie. Basically, what if there was a species of creature that perfectly mimicked humans? They would act like they had dreams and aspirations and opinions, but inside they had no free will, no consciousness at all. I'm currently listening to Bill Bryson's A Short History of Nearly Everything on audiobook, so I'll just share a quote with you guys. Suppose that there was a button you could push and you could light up all the Earth-crossing asteroids larger than about 10 meters. There would be over 100 million of these objects in the sky. In short, you would see not a couple of thousand distant twinkling stars, but millions upon millions of nearer, randomly moving objects, so all of which are capable of colliding with the Earth and all of which are moving on slightly different courses through the sky at different rates. It would be deeply unnerving. Well, be unnerved, because it is there. You just can't see it. Altogether it is thought though it is really only a guess. Based on extrapolating from cratering rates on the moon that some 2000 asteroids big enough to imperil civilized existence regularly cross our orbit. But even a small asteroid the size of a house, say could destroy a city. The number of these relative tiddlers in Earth crossing orbits is almost certainly in the hundreds of thousands and possibly in the millions. And they are nearly impossible to track. Sleep tight, Reddit. Phase shift. Everyone has heard of phase change, water turning to ice because it loses energy. Well, oddly enough, the same thing can happen to our universe. We know this because it has already happened. Short time after the Big Bang, a phase shift took place as the universe cooled. A part of the universe completely changed and destroyed the old part of the universe. This new universe then engulfed the old universe from the inside out, destroying everything and creating new laws of physics as it happened. This can potentially happen again at any time. If it does happen again, everything will be destroyed in an instant. One of two, that there are unfathomable leviathans that dwell in the universe, not unlike those in Lovecraft or other cosmic horror stories, whose appearances and motives are terrible far beyond the comprehension of mortal beings. That can and will completely eliminate existence with more ease than you or I flicking a light switch. Or, that we are completely and utterly alone in the universe, simply organized amalgams of the various elements arising out of sheer chance, living a doomed existence on a small rock orbiting a lonely star in some obscure corner of an insignificantly small galaxy floating through the unimaginable infinity of space. Take your pick. It's possible I'm the only observer of the universe. Everything, the Earth, the universe itself, the laws of physics, even people who describe identical experiences to my own, were made up by me, whatever entity I am, who possesses awareness for an unknown reason. Our minds are just neurons firing off in a specific way. Every action and choice you make really isn't a choice at all. Every bad or good decision will be made no matter what. Our minds trick us into thinking we can make choices when in reality we are just another part of the universe being propelled by natural forces. Consciousness is just a weird aberration in evolution, and other life in the universe may be highly intelligent, but not actually consciousness. So, even if we found out there are aliens somewhere out there, we still, in a sense, be alone. I wonder if one day you die or kill yourself, whichever, doesn't matter, and at that moment you back away from a carnival type box that your eyes look into. Your real friends are standing there laughing because you stayed in the game for so long. Very little actual time has passed. You are butthurt because the miserable life you just experienced was a very long miserable life and they all let you live in there and hurt. In real life it only took 5 minutes. Your friends watched and laughed at your hard times on a big screen above the carnival box that you sat at. This will be buried, but I dated a guy who works for a company in Washington, D.C. Apparently when the House of Cards came out, a ton of political people started freaking out because the storylines are so true that they thought someone was talking. So a huge majority of them hired his company to keep them safe. The one I find the most currently concerning is gamma ray burst, GRB. We think we've seen them happen indirectly a few times in other galaxies, and they are scary. Basically, if a blue giant star, real big and hot, top 5%, goes up, it can form a GRB with a supernova. Whilst a supernova will pretty much never hit much outside a few light years, a gamma flash can easily hit across the galaxy in effective range. If a strong GRB hits Earth, the entire atmosphere is taken with the GRB and the magnetic field of the Earth fails to go over it as well, rendering us extinct in milliseconds. You'd have early warning by the visible supernova, but shortly after the hit would be unstoppable. David Lynch's take on human relationships. American daily life is about as scary as it gets for me. That there exists no saving love. Ultimately the world is seething with horror and delirium. If you actually level up to a life of bliss and love, you are bound to attract equally intense horrors to yourself. If any of these theories are putting people through a bit of a psychological hurdle where you are asking yourself if life is even really worth living, if any of these are true, just always remember, what matters is what we perceive to matter. Even if the theory that everything else is a figment of all of our imaginations is correct, does it really matter? You are still you, and you are still experiencing this simulation reality dream every day. So you might as well accept that you are a part of it and continue to live your life in the way best for you. It actually matters 0% if these theories are true, because fake or not, your life is still your life. Even if we are in a computer simulation, there isn't much we can do about it. Might as well enjoy it while we are here and not think too hard about what could be. Not to say don't ponder and philosophize, but just don't let it get you down when you read about things like this. Honestly, the thought that we could die and there literally be no type of afterlife. I'm not religious by any means, but the idea of nothing after we die scares the hell out of me. My favorite by far is the 5-minute hypothesis that Bertrand Russell put forth, that all things, including all memory, all signs of aging and existence, were all created 5 minutes ago. It's totally impossible to prove, but if you sit and think about every time you blink could have been the first time you ever actually did it, it will keep you up at night.